Okay, here we are back in the kitchen, cooking up a little cross-grain bending magic. So, you may have noticed when I took the part out of the mahogany tool that it moved in this direction. And that's typical, that's spring back. You know, we were talking about memory, and that's an example of some memory. And so what I've learned to do is to put them in this little place here that is like a keeper, and will overbend the veneer slightly from what we'll need ultimately. I think in this way we can see these pretty pronounced ridges here that we're going to try and get away from. Now this one is curly maple, which behave, much more nicely. And then here's a piece of curly mahogany, which, is really a treat to bend this stuff. And these parts are happy to sit in there. Okay, so that's the keeper. And for now, we're going to try and see if we can't get a better result from the chestnut. Pretty interesting material. It's a lot like brown ash. And I'm calling it Italian chestnut. I'm not exactly sure where it came from. It did grow on the European continent somewhere, but it may be from Italy or England. Okay, so we have about 20 grams, just under 20 grams of epoxy, and I have just mixed up. And these are just pieces of ignominious particle board, which tend to be really flat. And our linen. So, what we're hoping to do is to fill the linen weave with the epoxy resin, so that we get good bonding. But we're hoping also not to get so much epoxy involved in this layup that we're going to soak the wood with epoxy. We want just enough resin to complete a good bond to help support our bending. Now, a lot has been said about how things penetrate into wood, whether it's bonding agents or glues or resins or finishes. And this is something that I took the trouble to look into closely years ago. And from what I can tell, it's very difficult to get most liquids that are not water to migrate very far into wood. And as you may imagine, different species will have different characteristics in this way. But for the most part, I think we can safely say that with something like this, which is a, pretty, well, maybe a medium viscosity liquid, we don't expect this stuff to go into the wood very much at all. And I've done some laminating under high pressure, and let's see what we got here. And I can tell you for sure that in my experience at least, the epoxy resin only penetrates the wood a few thousandths of an inch. Not a lot more than that. Still, we're trying our best to keep it out of the wood material. We don't want it to penetrate into the wood material because we don't want the epoxy to stiffen the wood that we're trying to bend any more than we need to. Okay, so there's pretty good wet out. Got plenty of length here, or enough anyway. And you can see with this diagonal or bias cut cloth, we can kind of push it around and get it to be, we can straighten it out or move it around a little bit. We need to make sure that's just where we want it. Okay. So now what I'll do is glove up and blot off whatever resin I can get off. We're going to make sure that there's just enough resin to fill the little spaces in the linen and not any more than that. And see, we're not taking a whole lot of resin out, but I still think it's important to try and get just the right resin to fiber ratio so that we get a good bond, again, without reinforcing the wood material that we want to bend across the grain. Okay. All right, so now when we look at this, we can see that the material's saturated, but it looks dry on the surface. Of course, we're going to put a lot of pressure on it and drive the resin into the material. Now this is the side that we've chosen for the outside. Make sure to put that down. Okay. Nice thing about this layup is that we don't really have to worry about it shifting around while we're clamping it. Get plenty of friction out of the texture in the cloth. I don't think you could really put too much pressure on there. Probably I'm going to use more clamps than we really need, but want to make sure that we get a good bond. we have it. Tomorrow, we'll get this out and set about bending this and see if we get a better result. Well, in our last episode, we used a bunch of tricks to bend this veneer across the grain, and I wasn't totally satisfied with how it worked because we got some ridges, wrinkles, whatever you want to call them, discontinuities. So here's an example of a part that I really like. This is curly maple that bent beautifully, perhaps partly because of the grain orientation, like we were saying before. Maybe it's partly because it was rift sawn. But as I mentioned, maple is prone to bend easily anyhow. It's a dream wood for bending. And whereas this obviously is not. So we're going to try it again, and we're going to throw some new tricks in the book and see if we can't get a better result. The first trick, as we pointed out last time, is that we're going to use these, we're going to use time on our side, so we've only let this epoxy layup go for about a day. So, well, this will be perfectly well cured. It won't have accelerated all the way towards its final crystalline structure, and maybe we can make use of a little bit of elasticity, not being all the way advanced to cure, to help us get a nice even bend in this difficult material. Just another example of how wood is variable across species, and there's all kinds of things that you might not think of. Anyway, here, let's look at what we have. Looks like we've got good wet out everywhere. In other words, we're not seeing white fibers, but we're seeing relatively clear fibers where the fibers have been filled up by the resin. And yeah, they look about the same. Okay, so this time we're going to try using a little bit of heat and see if that isn't going to help us achieve what we want with this veneer softener juice. Okay. As we were saying, the epoxy goes through these different stages where it cuts quite differently, and this is a kind of a nice, well, it's past hard Parmesan, but it is pretty easy to cut still compared to what it'll be like in a week or so. Oops. All right. And we'll check to make sure it's not too long. That's good. It's just about the same length as the tool. If it's too long, the bag can initiate a crack, which we don't want, of course. All right, well, we'll see how we go here. So we'll make a bag out of aluminum foil. So this is folded over double already. Get some heat in here this time. So this will be the change that we make, is to add a little bit of heat to the bending juice in the part. This is a silicone blanket heater, which is just 2 layers of fiberglass cloth that's impregnated with silicone rubber. And then there's a back and forth array of flat nichrome wire, which is a high resistance wire that gives good service as a heating element, just like it would in your toaster. We've got this on 65 volts here, which looks like 120F or 55C. Maybe take a little better than that. And I'm not sure, as I mentioned last time, what the optimum length of time is to get this juice into the wood and have it do what we want it to do. But we'll leave it in here for a little while. Okay, so that's right around 100 C. Yeah, I never tried this before, but as I mentioned, it's proving to be a difficult to bend material. So we'll see if we can maybe get some help here. .225F or 105C. Probably about right around boiling. All right, so we've got this turned all the way down, which means it's full of air, but it's not rock hard. Let's start with that. Yeah, 235F, or what is this, 110 or something? 120, 120. Well, the veneer is definitely taking on some moisture because it's curling in this direction. 258. This will be about 125. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm encouraged by the fact that it's bending, even though it's bending in the wrong direction. But that's okay. It means that this bending juice is getting in there. So sure looks nice, huh? All right, so this is feeling pliant. I don't know. We'll find out. So stick this guy in here. Well, that seems good. We haven't heard any cracking noises, which is just what we want. And seems like the veneer is all the way down in there where we want it. Almost completely seated in the mold. Not quite, but real close. All right, so we'll put these guys on. Should we be playing music at times like this? Would you? Maybe you could vote. Should have somebody playing some guitar music, right? Help the workday go by. We'll look into that. All right. Okay, we'll apply some pressure. Okay, well, that's 80 psi. Haven't heard the slightest complaint. And looks like we've got good contact everywhere. Well, I think we've improved it with our heat. So we will get back with you in tomorrow, I guess, and have a look. Here we are at Rev 2 of our neck veneer cross-grain bending project. As I said, I've put these clamps, the ones I'm removing now, I put them on here because I have exploded this mahogany block a time or two with the pressure of the airbag and had to glue that back together, but seems to be none the worse for wear, really. It's still working okay. And we'll see the results of our trial. So we, in the second round of this, we added heat. We went from whatever it was, 70 degrees ambient, to about 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Just under 100 Celsius. And see what we got. So here's our part. Still a little moist after, what is it, 2 days, I guess. And still slightly stuck to the tool. The tool is lined with, well, it's covered with epoxy and sanded. Okay, there it comes out. All right, now, oh, this is way better. We can still feel the grain lines, but they're very slight. And we don't have anything like the bad wrinkles that we had when we did it without the heat. So I would say this was a roaring success and a very nice part. You can see there's pretty strong piece of material here. Not that we're counting on it to be terribly strong, but why not? It's in our neck. Might as well get some stiffness out of it. Of course, the carbon fiber is going to provide a huge amount of stiffness, but every little bit helps, I guess. And I'm sure that the different species of wood that I've used for this neck veneer has some small effect on the tone of the neck also. I wouldn't know how to quantify that, but I'm pretty sure life experience has shown that everything counts at least a little bit, right? Anyhow, a real success. The addition of heat was a good idea and got a much better part. Thanks for watching.